Well, joining us to discuss these developments from Bangkok, Sean Boonprakong. He's an advisor to the Prime Minister's office and a former national security advisor. From London, Tim Forsyth, a professor at the London School of Economics and Political Science. And also from Bangkok, Benjamin Zawacki, an independent Southeast Asia analyst. Welcome to you all. Let's begin with Sean Boonprakong. There's been a day to think about it. What do you believe provoked the Army's sudden action?
I believe the Army claims that the attack upon PDRC site at Democracy Monuments more or less provide a point for them to start martial law and eventually the coup. But I believe that after initial euphoria by PDRC supporter, the General Prayut, who unlike General Sonthi, the last general of the coup back in 2006, they would face a different condition that they have never faced before. First of all, there is a domestic opposition brewing, 4 places, 2 in Bangkok and 2 in the rural areas, and plus international resistance. France has condemned pretty fast. All European nations has more or less want to see election as fast as possible. United States more or less is by law they have to do something, and I wonder if those who more or less are happy with this coup would General Sonthi, General Prayut, whether he did it himself or whoever behind him, doesn't understand that he faced a lot of problems after this. Reality set in. Now he's the Prime Minister caretaking. He has to get a royal decree. And of course, with a lot of unsettling situation at hand, restriction of media freedom, detainment of 150 leaders on both sides, plus 2 former Prime Minister. General Prayut has to answer the world how he planned to proceed with his action the past several days.
Well, we'll get on to that particular point in a little bit, but Benjamin Zawacki, the original question, what do you think provoked the Army's sudden action, having declared martial law, but then dismissing an elected government? Why did that happen so suddenly, do you believe?
I think General Prayut didn't feel that there was any sign soon that a functioning democracy would be at issue here in Thailand. In contrast to coup announcements in Thailand going as far back as 1947, in the coup announcement the other night, Prayut didn't mention the words democracy, much less human rights. And also, when you look at the name of the coup group, the PMOC, there's no mention there of democracy either. And this is in contrast to coup groups in Thailand going back, as I say, for many decades. And it's also in contrast to a proliferation of opposition groups that have come up in the country, the PAD, the PDRC, the UDD. All of those groups mention democracy or democratic. This coup group is not talking at all about restoring democracy or promoting and protecting human rights. I think that first and foremost, it's looking to restore, as it terms it, peace and order.
Well, Tim Forsyth, we're referring to that previous coup in 2006. Some observers have said that was almost an apologetic coup. No sense of that whatsoever this time.
No, indeed. Certainly in 2006 you had the image of soldiers carrying flowers to try and demonstrate their goodwill. This time it's a much more aggressive, militaristic act. I think the key objective at the moment seems to be that unless the army acted now, then the prospects of some kind of violence on the streets was quite likely. Of course, Thailand is not well known for street fighting, but certainly there was brewing discontent because the yellow shirt camp was there in strength and the red shirts were growing as well, and I think the army was worried that might lead towards clashes.
Well, Sean Boonprakong, your view of that, the army claim that it's acting to promote stability and peace, and yet there is going to be a kickback reaction to this, particularly by those who support the current government, is there not?
I don't believe for a minute that the army claims of justification of the Democracy Monument attack. But I look at it more or less as been premeditated, has been somewhat of a conspiracy between the PDRC, the independent organization, the elite that start this current constitution, who would like to, who are impatient with long-term democratic process and use this corruption issue as a pretext. And I think that is the international community should not be fooled by General Prayut rhetoric. And I believe that if General Prayut side with the government and say to Mr. Suthep, says go home and let's just play by the rules, and of course come up with a better policy in terms of whatever could appeal to the electorate, that could have been done. But this crisis is more or less on a pretext of more or less a blanket amnesty that doesn't exist for 6 months. So I really don't believe that it was just spontaneous, but more or less a premeditated conspiracy. But now they did it, they're going to have to face their own consequences. And I bet if they could take back, they might have to reconsider it.
Well, just to mention the PDRC you referred to, the opposition democratic movement, the yellow shirts as they are popularly called. Benjamin Zawacki, it would appear that the army action has played into the hands of those who were opposed to the government. They have been calling for a deposition of this particular government. Is there any possibility of the conspiracies to which Sean Buprakong is referring?
Well, it's difficult to say. Certainly Suthep has been among the leader of the PDRC, has been among the leaders who has been detained, in addition to some 150 other leaders. Interesting is that despite the fact that there was talk before the declaration of martial law of a possible election in July, and then reports of talks of an August election between the declaration of martial law and the coup itself, another omission on the part of the coup group is any talk of an election in the near future. And most of us, the PDRC accepted, I suppose, would say that an election is a critical part of the restoration of democracy. And yet there's no talk of that whatsoever. And so what remains to be seen is just how indefinite this martial law in this coup d'etat is going to last and what the end game is going to be.
Yes, Tim Forsyth, is there an end game, do you believe? Is there any sign that the army has an end game in mind?
At the moment, no, they don't have a stated end game, but I think it is only a matter of time before they do announce a plan towards having general elections. I think the world leaders will put pressure on Thailand unless they come forward with a plan for general elections. However, the big debate in Thailand over the last couple of months is whether to have elections quickly or whether to have reforms before elections. And the big question is, what kind of reforms? From a yellow shirt point of view, the reforms that are required are to make sure that no representative of a Thaksin Shinawatra family can stand for election again. Of course, from the government point of view, the red shirt point of view, that is going to be a rather difficult thing to agree to.
Well, Sean Buprakong, the government, to reiterate, the army, has suspended the constitution that is in place at the moment. The possibility we are discussing at the moment of elections at some stage, but it's highly unlikely that this current constitution would be introduced in its current form, do you believe?
I believe it would be restrictive to make sure that those who vote for the Pheu Thai party have less of a power. But you have to understand that from the last coup, which was voted on a referendum, it was their side. It was PDRC/Democrat and these elite coup makers that wrote this. And then now they want to change it. And they set up the rules. But what happened was that they haven't had a creative a policy by the Democratic Party to engage the voters from the north and the northeast who vote for the Pheu Thai party. I believe that this lip service of trying to write the constitution, that would be more favorable even. Plus, but we don't know is how long this would be. It could be longer. But I believe it's a quick resistance that without the royally decree position that General Prayut is doing the caretaking government himself, he's facing the same problem that running the country is not as easy as having a coup.
Yeah, well, Tim Forsyth, speaking of the opposition, the Democrats, they have not won a national election process since 1992. They boycotted the most recent electoral vote in February this year. If there's an election, are there any guarantees that they will again take part?
I would have thought that the Democrats will take part if they are satisfied that the reforms they are asking for have been delivered on. And those reforms are largely to do with trying to exclude the influence of Thaksin on the domestic politics of Thailand at a time when Thaksin is under a charge of corruption. And I think the delicate diplomatic task that the army will be required to do will be to try and deliver those kinds of reassurances or deals which will then allow a general election to take place. However, I should also say that I think patience is running out for the Democrats. I mean, they played the strategy this time of boycotting the elections. If they were to do it again, I think people might begin to get a little bit fed up with that and start to ignore them.
Well, Benjamin Zawacki, there does appear to be a really strongly personal element in this involving the Sinawats, particularly Thaksin Sinawat. Is there any possibility of a Pheu party existing without the family who appear to be the focal point of the anger of those opposed to the current government?
I would expect that will be one of the conditions of the reforms that Tim mentions. In many ways, Apisit, Sutep, leaders, respectively, of the Democrat Party, of the PDRC, are in many ways the opposite side of the same coin that the military is a part of. But I do expect if the reforms go forward before an election, the reforms will result in certain changes such that even if the Democrat Party loses the next election, which I think most people expect will be the case, it will still find a way, either it itself, the Democrat Party, or persons and groups aligned with it, will find a way to still hold a preponderance of power in the country. And that's what they mean by reforms, is changing the rules in such a way as to have the power, even if they're not technically in office.
Tim Forsyth, what role is the monarchy playing in this? This is in the background in Thailand all the time. An aging king, 86 years old, been as king for more than 60 years. Is there perhaps an impetus to the army action relating to the royalty?
Well, so far it's difficult to say based upon the statements made by either the monarchy or by the army so far. So it's very difficult to speculate without the king making a statement or anything like that. But certainly there is a great deal of uncertainty in Thailand about the advanced age and the poor health of the king, and whether this will create a situation of political instability. I read one report this morning that suggested that the army might hold power until the next monarch takes over. Personally, I'd be surprised at that happening. But certainly, I think the situation where the king might be nearing the end of his life is creating a situation that will worry a great deal of the establishment, such as the military, and therefore that might actually make them be more willing to take control rather than let other people take control.
Benjamin Zawacki, your view on that particular issue?
Yes, the tolerance for military rule and military leadership in Thailand for really 6 or 7 decades now is largely attributable to the purposeful association of the military with Thailand's monarchy. While it is not illegal to criticize the military as it is to criticize the monarchy, one of the reasons people, and if polls are to be believed, a majority of Bangkokians, if not Thais, are supporting martial law and supporting the coup, is because the line between the military and the monarchy is very blurry. The military's most professed purpose and mandate is to protect the monarchy, whatever that may mean. There's been no credible external threat to the country in over 3 decades. And so I think as we move forward, there is certainly some link between what's happened in the past week and the state of the palace. But as Tim said, it's very difficult to speculate what that link is.
Sean Boonprakong, I want to refer to a point that you were making right at the beginning of the program, international reaction, in particular the reaction of the United States. Unlike the case where recent coup in Egypt, for example, the Secretary of State very quick to describe this action as a coup, saying that the State Department reviewing all its options. The Pentagon has said that it's reviewing its relationship with the Turkish military, the biggest supplier and backer of the Thai military. Do you think that the army leaders actually foresaw this pretty strong reaction from the United States in particular?
To a certain extent, they know it was coming, I think, through a private contact, the good relationship between United States Armed Forces and current Thai Armed Forces. I think word to the effect that we would view such possibility of the coup and react because we have a law in the United States book that we have to do something. But as far as whether it's substantial, it isn't. It's only like $6 million assistance program. But the type of prestige that the Thai like to say they attach in the free world with the United States, they would lose a lot of face, and that matters a whole lot. I think they are extraordinarily sensitive with international opinion, and this is why for the past 6 months they refused to get involved in the process. But nevertheless, this is a coup that doesn't have to happen. Other ways that could be done, and of course we anticipate that eventually through international pressure that democracy could be restored in hopefully not too far in the near future.
Tim Forsyth, your view of that, do you think that international pressure could have an impact on this situation?
Yes, I think it could have an impact. I mean, there are a variety of ways that could happen. For example, tourism is going to be affected by the curfew at the very least. The idea of tourists going to Thailand and then told to stay in their hotels is not really what people want to do. But also just the prospect of political instability will affect the economy of Thailand. There's one report that said that the economy has retracted by 2% during the first quarter of this year. And that's probably due to the political turmoil. But also, I just think there are all sorts of other ways in which the United States and Europe, for example, can put encouragement for the government to announce elections soon. I think they can all see the logic in trying to avoid political turmoil, although probably they are overstating that risk. But as long as the military government announces plans to have elections quite soon, then I think things will be generally better for the international community.
Benjamin Zawacki, were you surprised at the speed of the United States in classifying this as a coup, remembering, of course, that this does have legal connotations, consequences within the United States itself, acts of Congress, and were you surprised that the U.S. categorized this action so quickly?
I was. It exists in contrast to recent situation in Egypt, for example. But one needs to keep in mind this legislation has been on the books for some time in America, whereby military and economic sanctions are automatically invoked in the event of a coup. Moreover, within that legislation, there's a great deal of discretion afforded to the U.S. military and policymakers. In the wake of the 2006 coup, the amount of cuts and assistance to the Thai military was frankly relatively minimal. Not to mention that in the 15 months after the 2006 coup, the Thai military's budget still managed to increase by 50% without United States assistance, or at least with less U.S. assistance. And so while General Prayuth certainly would be aware of the potential international implications of a coup d'etat, it's not clear that he's terribly concerned with it.
Well, Tim Forsyth, as we're winding down here, where to now? Do you predict early elections, or is it waiting?
I would personally predict, in as far as I can, that the general pattern for a military takeover is for it to last about 9 to 12 months. That they have to work towards a timeline for general elections, but the general elections won't take place immediately. They have to work out some kind of deals and some kind of reforms before that happens. I think the sort of timeline we're looking at the moment is within the next month we'll get an announcement about elections, a timescale, and then there'll be negotiations and then preparations.
Sean Boone Prakong, your view on that? Do you think that there would be a government that you could again be an advisor to in the near future?
Well, we were aiming for between 4 to 6 months, but just because the military want to really take this power, I'm not certain. There will be some type of resistance in the, I'm talking about, I don't want to say the military resistance, but not a general uprising, but there will be some pocket, and that will make their job a little bit harder to really point out to 1 year target. However, I'm still quite hopeful, but you have to understand that if the rules are fair, like 1997 people-written constitution, Pheu Thai would win handily again, and that's what the new constitution is what Pheu Thai voters are afraid that it would be rigged in favor of the elitists and Democratic Party, which they will not tolerate.
Benjamin Zawacki, very quickly, we have made mention of this, but the red shirt movement, very different to what it was in 2006, far more organized, very strong, particularly in its power base in the north of the country. Are they capable of mounting strong resistance to the military takeover?
Well, I think in reference to your last question, capable possibly, but I don't see that happening. I think General Prayuth will keep martial law in effect for as long as it takes for the citizens of the country, including those wearing red, to feel the effects of it, because the effects of martial law on human rights are dramatic. And I think he'll want that to stay in place to preclude any sort of uprising or resistance on the part of red shirts, and only then and until then, with domestic priorities firmly in place, with quote-unquote reforms firmly in place, will some sort of election or solution to this be found.
Well, at that point, my thanks to our guests, particularly those in Bangkok approaching a curfew, Sean Boonprakong, Tim Forsyth in London, and Benjamin Zawacki. And let us know your thoughts. You can find us at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or send your comments to @AJ Inside Story on Twitter. I'm Mike Hanna. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.